this very morning, there are huge political developments underway that make this event hugely timely, and a discussion about kind of identity hugely timely as well. So we're grateful to have your ears, as Sonia said, bright and early with us today, so we can talk through a few of those things.
Yeah, so we won't talk for too long because we do have a very important guest here with us and friend of Waging Peace, and we're waiting for another person to come as well. But as Pauline said, we want to talk about Darfur, but you cannot talk about Darfur without talking about Sudan, the broader issues around various conflict areas in Sudan. So we will be spending some time talking about how Darfur sort of the genocide occurred, but also taking you through to different regions of Sudan. But first, let me just tell you a little bit about Waging Peace and how we got started. So our founder, Rebecca Tinsley, who is a journalist, she's also does many other wonderful things, but she went to Darfur at the height of the genocide in about 2004 and saw what was happening, saw the massive violence, and also, well, saw the repercussions of the violence, and also met with a lot of people who were internally displaced. And she came back to the UK absolutely enraged and wanted to do something about it. So she founded Waging Peace. At the time in the US, there was the Save the Darfur campaign, but there wasn't so much happening in the UK. So Waging Peace was founded, and we were originally founded as a campaign and advocacy organization where we campaigned specifically to the UK government to provide some interventions in Darfur, in Sudan, and bringing some international attention to help the people on the ground. Our work evolved over the first few years, again, doing a lot of campaigning and advocacy. And that afforded us a real privileged position to be able to get to know many of the diaspora here in the UK. And through our contacts and our working together and campaigning together, we started to get to know community leaders as well. And in about 2008, there was the first sort of rallying calls of asking for our support to help asylum seekers who were starting to arrive in the UK from Sudan, who were coming from the conflict areas such as Darfur. So we started to build in asylum, what we call casework, supporting asylum seekers, as Maddie was already describing. And that's where we started to broaden our work. And we see it as a really important, well-rounded, meaningful support element that we provide, with the very individual and specific, helping one person to organizing community, working with community members for their own advocacy, and us also entering into some policy space to do our own. So that's a little bit about our background. Did you want to add something to that?
No, I think that's a good description of who we are and why we're here today. Would it be helpful to go to what's the kind of really basic history? But I would like to defer and say we have an expert Sudanese historian with us. So I don't want this to be in any way a stand-in for Bushra's own history of what's happened in Sudan, but to give that really big overview. And we are talking a big overview because this is 30 years at the minimum of history that we might seek to cover. But you cannot understand the kind of situation that Sudan's in today and the reasons that Darfur and the crisis and the genocide in Darfur came about without understanding the nature of kind of different political regimes in Sudan, and chief among them the former regime, and I maybe put former in scare quotes, of the former president Omar al-Bashir. So many of the crimes that we will speak about, and I'm sure that Bushra, and when he joins Al-Sadiq, will be able to speak about, occurred under the leadership of the former president. And when Sonia was describing going to Darfur and what our founder, Becky Tinsley, saw there, she saw the stains of genocide. She saw people who had been targeted on the basis of their ethnicity in Darfur and had been treated brutally. And we could go into the kind of brief history of that, but it's important to know that there was ethnic targeting and that this fact was recognised by the UK government, the US government, and by an arrest warrant that was issued for Bashir, the President Bashir, and other individuals for committing war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide in Darfur. And roughly what was happening, and it's all going to be very brief, so apologies, but is that there was an armed movement, there were armed struggles by people fighting their economic and other marginalization in the Darfur region, that the government, the central government, then responded to in the most brutal fashion and using scorched earth tactics. So rather than engaging in violence just against the armed movement, they very much treated local populations and civilians as being responsible for the armed movements and that struggle, and they sought to root out any forms of support that those armed movements might get, whether that was through burning villages, whether that was through the rape of women, systematic rape of women, mass rapes, whether it was through poisoning wells, killing livestock. The average pictures that you'd see from that time, really sadly, were burning villages, shots, aerial shots that people were forced to take of just the complete destruction of lands, which then obviously led to the forced movement of Darfuri people, mainly into neighboring Chad, which is where many of the camps remain to this day, 17 years on. And so that was kind of the violence that we were seeing there. But importantly, as we've alluded to, that mode of violence is not just in Darfur. We've also seen horrific violence of that kind in other areas of Sudan, in other marginalized areas of Sudan that were not in the center, such as the Nuba Mountains, such as Blue Nile, the east of the country, the north. It was very much a situation where a central government was trying to control the resources and territory of peoples that it felt did not live up to its project of what it wanted to be as a country, which was broadly a kind of Arab, non-African country. Whereas, of course, Sudan is populated with people who do not fit that mold. So it was a process of kind of ethnic cleansing that was going on in the country, and that largely has continued up until this day. And I say this despite the fact that I kind of started this saying Omar al-Bashir is someone we have to know if we want to know about some of the violence that happened in Sudan. He was actually ousted in an incredible people's-led revolution back in 2019. And when I say incredible, I can't describe to you the kind of millions of people that poured out onto the streets of the capital, Khartoum, but also many other cities around Sudan, calling for the removal of Bashir and calling for freedom, peace, and justice for the Sudanese people. It was one of the most inspiring sights I've seen in my job, is to see people join, and they were chanting things on the streets like, "We are all Darfur. We all associate ourselves with the struggle of the Darfuri people." Not to put too sad a point on it, but we flash forward to today. Although there was the ouster of Bashir, there came in a new kind of military-civilian partnership of a government, which was an uneasy compromise between those two sides. And unfortunately, what happened just in October, 25th of October of this year, we're almost exactly 1 month since that day now. I've noticed just glancing at the date, that hasn't really registered to me. There was a coup, and the military half of that transitional government just stole the institutions of state, arrested the interim prime minister and other ministers and activists, and has engaged in the brutal crackdown on the protests that have come about as a result of that coup. So that's kind of where we are today. In a nutshell, there's so much more that you could share, but we are in a situation where the military has again grabbed power, and obviously the fears of many people could be, well, despite, even if you don't stop at thinking about the killings of protesters, which are shocking, and the numbers are now in the 40s of people who've been killed, and that's just in Khartoum. I mean, the statistics are probably way higher than we think, but these are registered deaths. What other people in different marginalized areas like Darfur, like Nuba Mountains, are also having terrible violence enacted on them, and the killings never really stopped for them.
Yeah.
And so the worry is, are we going to return to decades of marginalization, decades of genocidal violence for peoples who have been marginalized before and in some of the worst ways imaginable?
And when we say that the killing hasn't really stopped, it has not really stopped. And this isn't a misnomer. A lot of people believe that the Darfur genocide happened and it was a thing of the past and it's over now. Because many other genocides have that finite sort of end point. And it's not the case with Darfur, it's not the case with Sudan and many other conflict areas. So in Darfur in January this year, for example, and then again a few months later, there were massacres for in a village and city area that is very dominant with non-Arab people. And again, it's the same sort of replication of what happened in the past. There's the killing, the raping, the pillaging, the looting, the taking of the livestock, and just making the lives of the people who are already conflict exhausted ever much more miserable. And there's a gentleman that we came to know, just to kind of humanize this a little bit, who is from the Masalit tribe, which is a tribe in Darfur, who he survived the conflict back in 2003, 2004, fled for his safety, had a very sad experience where his wife and children were killed back in Darfur. He got to the UK, was able to find safety here, was able to build a life, but always longing for his home. He returned in January of this year, and he found a new wife. He had a new baby. His wife sadly died during childbirth, and then the massacre happened, and very sadly, he was killed. So he now has this orphan child. So these are the real scenarios that are happening right now, time and again, in Darfur, in the conflict areas. Sorry, we were having IT issues earlier, and the gentleman has come in to help. So this is the tragedy. So when we speak about the hardship of the coup in the last that came about a month ago, we are talking about the entire nation of Sudan, the people of Sudan, the majority of the people of Sudan on the ground who are just tired of the conflict. They are absolutely fed up and want no military rule whatsoever. These are the voices on the ground. They want peace, freedom, and justice. And we, all of us, as friends, as neighbors, as colleagues with Sudanese who are in Northern Ireland, their Sudanese are all over in the UK. We have a responsibility as well to really welcome people and understand a little bit about their background so that they're able to feel the welcome as well. So without further ado, I think what we need to do is really just bring in the two voices. I know Al Sadiq has come, and also Bushra. So first of all, let me introduce Al Sadiq. And I don't know, Pauline, if you're able to spotlight if you can speak Al Sadiq.
Yeah, you can.
There you are. Hello.
Oh, wow. Hi. Yeah.
Al Sadiq is currently in Israel. And we just want to introduce him. He is a survivor of the Darfur genocide and also an extraordinary person who we have come to really be very fond of and are working with in many different capacities. So El Sadiq, welcome and thank you for being here.
Well, good morning, everybody. Madi and Sonia, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to share with you this conversation. And thank you to my brother Bushra and for all the audience for coming and listening to us. My name is Al Sadiq Sadiq Ahmad. I'm a Sudanese refugee from Darfur. I born in a small village in North Darfur state, which is called Mashru Saganam. I born up there and I raised up in the same village. I studied my first school in the same village. During my first school, one day I have been beaten in school from my teacher just because I leave my home. I decided to leave my home and my family for safety. I came to Egypt in the first day when I come to Egypt. I was looking up for a human rights organization or UN offices in case of to apply for asylum seeker. In that time, I met some people in Egypt, Sudanese people. They told me that, especially in this time, it was in 2009, it's not safety for me to stay there because there's so many people like me whom ran away from Darfur. They come to Egypt, they arrest them again and return them back to Sudan. And I ask myself where I can go, because even if our neighborhood, which is Egypt, is like didn't understand us, where may I go? I have two choices in that time, or to continue my like continue for looking safety to go to Europe, or to come to Israel, because since 2005, after Mustafa Mahmoud regarding demonstration what Sudanese refugee had made in Egypt, and they just arrest people over there and kill some refugee Sudanese people start to come to cross the border to come to Israel. And I hear about some friend from Egypt in Egypt that there's some Sudanese refugee has crossed the border to Israel. Maybe it will be a good place to go. And since that moment, I just remind before I don't have any information about Israel, rather than what I heard during my study about what happened before to Jewish people in the German, the Holocaust. And I said, okay, maybe if our neighborhood didn't understand us, maybe the Jewish state, they can understand me, why I leave my home and my country, because what's happening for me right now, if it's not exactly what happened for them before, might can be similar to what happened for them, so they can understand me. So I crossed the border in March 2009 to Israel through Sinai. The Israeli soldiers caught me after I crossed the border and took me to a prison, call it Sahranim. It is actually between Egyptian border and Israel borders. And I met there so many people in the prison, Sudanese and Eritrean refugee. In the Sahranim prison, it's actually the place where no way can giving us an opportunity to seek asylum or even to explain why we we come to Israel. From there, my activities start in a prison, because I was like every day asking them to give me opportunity to seek asylum, but they refuse. And one day they just took me from there to separate prison, because they say just making a problem for them. After they transfer me to a separate prison, after 1 week, they just released me. And the way of being had been released was very, very surprise for me, because they just opened the door of the prison and told me to walk out. After I walk out, they just close the door behind me and they say, "You are free right now." And imagine that, to be in a country that you don't know to speak the language, and you don't know everyone, and even you are young, under 20 years old. So it was really difficult time for me to find myself in that moment. I come to Tel Aviv city, in area of new bus station. Maybe you hear about it. There is big garden near to new bus station Tel Aviv, where is a lot of refugee sleeping in the garden actually. I met some Sudanese refugee there and some Eritrean refugees. So from that moment I realized that my new life has begun in a place that I know nobody, and in the same time I'm not even my English was very bad, and I didn't speak Hebrew. So and the first thing come up in my mind is to find a place to continue my study, because in Sudan I studied until the high school. So I didn't succeed to find a place to study, because in any place where I go, because actually I reached to so many schools in Tel Aviv, but they reject me. So I start to find place to work, because I'm alone and in Israel. I need to work to care of myself, to run a house, to so go on. So I went to a lot. Even in a lot, it wasn't easy for me to find a job. And the same time in a lot, there was a lot of refugee families in a lot, and for their kids, they don't have a chance to be accepted in kindergarten or in school. So the friends and I, we spoke about what we can do for those kids, because even if we need help, but we saw the kids they really need help much than we do. So we create an organization, call it Young's Dream, which is mean dream of youth, in case of to help those kids, at least can teach them some courses. And we succeed to teach them some courses in a language, and in math, and in computer science, something like that. Until we took their case to court, and in Beersheba city. One day the court had made a decision and say every child has a right to get to education access, no matter where they come from. At least they are living in Israel, they have a right to go to school. From that moment, I feel like even if I still in it's not good condition life, I feel like at least I did something for some people. I mean, kids, refugee kids in a lot. From that time, I moved to come back to Tel Aviv. I start to work in hotels, because the only work that they allowed us, or they accepted us as a refugee, to work in hotels or to work in a restaurant. So during all these years, I'm going to Interior Minister every 3-4 months to renew the visa that they have given me. And the visa, what they have given me, they actually written in the visa is, which is not allowed for me to work with this document. But they allowed us to work because they know if they really don't allow us, they will be a challenge for us how to live. In end of 2013, I went to Interior Minister as usual to renew my visa. They just told me this is time for you to leave the country or to go back to where you come from, or to move to third country, or to go in, to place yourself in a Holot facility if you hear about it, which is mean they give me a chance under three stabilities: go back, or to move to third country, which is they didn't name the country, or to jail myself without any reason. It was really hard for me to go back to Sudan that time because the same reasons letting me to leave the country still exist there, and also it's not like it's not easy for me to jail myself without any reason. And I took the third option, which is to move third country without to know actually the name of country. Until I came to airport, Ben Gurion Airport, I received a ticket of flying to Ethiopia. I understood from that time that this is the third country that they don't want to name it for me. I fly to Ethiopia. After I arrived to Addis Ababa airport, I stood in a terminal like everybody in case of to walk out from the airport. When I come to window, they just told me your flight is actually a connection flight, which is mean from Tel Aviv airport, just connection in Addis Ababa to change the plan and then to continue to Sudan, which is mean to Khartoum airport. I denied to continue flying. I stayed in Addis Ababa airport for almost 10 days. After 10 days, they returned me back to Israel again by force because I wasn't agreed to come back again. After they returned me back to Israel, they took me to place where, because of it, I decided to live to nowhere, which is a third country, Holot facility. They put me in Holot for almost 1 year after long process during the different court in Israel until I took my case to High Court in Jerusalem. The decision had been made there after 1 year, and they released me in 2015 from Holot facility. Again, I start from zero to start, living again from zero to looking up for a new job and to looking for some place, some people, some friend actually whom I know them before, at least can stay them for some days until I can rent a new house and so on, so on. So and actually I applied for asylum seeker in the end of 2017, exactly in the time where they give me they told me I must have to leave the country, and they invited me to make an interview for my asylum request in the time when I was in a Holot facility. Since that time until now, I'm still waiting for to receive an answer of my asylum application, but not yet, and I'm not sure that also I will receive answer about my asylum request. So after I began new life again, and I succeed to end of 2015 to accept it first time to do to study first degree in Ramat Gan Academic College. Hopefully, after 2 semesters, I decide to back off from college because it was really hard for me financially. So I stopped studying and get back to work. Again, in end of 2000, beginning of 2020, 2020, I accept again to do a first degree in Huda Sharon College in Huda Sharon City. Today, in my last semester. Hopefully, 2 months from now, I will finish my first degree. During my life in Israel, in 2011, I joined some people from my community, from the Berian community, whom they start to in process of develop our own languages, which is called Beria. I joined them because, as I told you in my first talk, that I has been beaten in my school because just I spoke my own language, my mother tongue language with the other students. So since that time, I took it as a dream that one day I would like to see my language can be written and write. So I succeed in 2012 to record the first class ever about how to learn Berian, my own languages in YouTube. And in 2017, I succeed to write the first book ever by my own languages, Beria. And since that time, I opened also like an online school, which is I'm teaching my community. We become more students and more teachers teaching and creating. Also, I succeed to create a keyboard, a digital keyboard for our own languages. So this is my story in general, my personal story. And also I would like to give you a short brief about what's going on in Darfur. As we know, this genocide in ethnic cleansing has begun in Darfur in end of 2002. Until today, there is the same crime is still happening since that time until today. Just before 4 days, we hear about the people has been killed in West Darfur. Over 100 people has been killed, and number of villages has been destroyed by the militia, the Janjaweed militia. This is actually the image of the world, because there's no media can publish or to share what's going on there, because this is one of strategy the Sudanese government took, because they are not allowing for international media or even local media to publish what's going on there. But the same crimes since 2003 until today, they're still happening day by day. A woman has been raped every day. People has been killed every day, and villages still burning day by day. And the same crimes and also still happening in the Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile, which is I have my friend here, Bushra, will explain about it more. But the war in the different places in Darfur since 2003 until today, there's nothing has been changed, even if after Bashir has come down, but the member of the Bashir cabinet is still, they're still running the country, which is one of them, General Burhan and General Hemeti. Those people whom there's the same people whom there was in a cabinet of Bashir regime, and those people they're still running the country, and they made the same crime because they know they have nowhere to go, because in the end they will face they will face court and go to judge, and they know what their future can be. So that's why before a couple of weeks, we have seen the COP has been made in Sudan, because they can make everything in just not being, not letting the transition government to being transferred in Sudan. So this is my story in general, and I also give you a small brief about what's going on in Sudan and in Darfur or in Blue Nile and Nova Mountain. So I will give a chance for my friend Biksha, or to return the mic to Madi and Sonia. Thank you so much.
El Sadiq, thank you so very, very much. It is always an honor to be able to listen to you in what you share, and you come with so much and you bring so much, and there's so much I learn each time I listen. So thank you for sharing with this audience and also with us. And we know that it's not easy. It's difficult to relive the memories as you're telling them. So it's a real honor. Thank you. And yes, as we promised, the story of Darfur is not complete without knowing more about Sudan and the conflict areas. And so we'd like to turn to our very dear friend, Bushra Gamma, and he is the director of the Hudo Center, which is a human rights organization that reports on human rights abuses in what are known as the two areas of Sudan, which are the Nuba Mountains, South Kordofan area, and Blue Nile. So Bushra, please welcome and thank you for being here.
Okay, thank you, Sonia, and thank you for everybody who interested to hear what about Sudan and in particular Darfur, and thank you for the organizer also. As Sonia said, I'm Bushra Gamar, Executive Director of Hudo Center. Hudo stands for Human Rights and Development Organization. It is based in Kampala, Uganda, but currently I'm here in London. I had worked before in Darfur with a Sudanese NGO also called SUDU. SUDU stands for Sudan Social Development Organization. From 2004 up to 2008 in Darfur. By that time, we had 5 offices there, and I was the regional manager for SUDU. And SUDU, unfortunately, closed by 2009 after the warrant issued by the ICC against Omar al-Bashir. So this is in brief. I think, I believe everybody here, he knows there is a genocide has been committed in Darfur. And I assume, or I guess, in your mind will be a question of why that happened and how. So I'm going to concentrate on those two W's, so on why and how. If I'm going to answer that, it will take me to give a brief background and to show why that happened. For me, it has 3 elements: the social element, climate element, and the political one, those 3. So in my brief in Sudan history, it may give you some answers about the social one. Sudan is a country in its current shape up to 2011, before secession of South Sudan. It was established or created by the Turkish. We had been colonized by Turkey from 1822 up to 1885 when we have our national government. By that time, it's called Mahdiya. And after that, we colonized by British from 1898 up to 1956. Within the Turkish era, actually, before the Turkish era, Sudan, it was a very fragmented kingdoms and sultanates based on a tribal. The Turkish actually unite this geographic area and call it Sudan according to their interest. So we believe Sudan geography has been prepared before having a cohesive nation. And after that, the cause of occupation by the Turkish, it was for hunting, slavery, because they need men for their military, and gold by that time. So they divided the nation within Sudan, some of them assisting on those slavery campaigns and the others victims. So how that division had been done, the division had been done for those people who have a brighter skin than others, and they call them Arab. While the rest who are talking in a different languages, and actually those talking in Arabic, the others who talking in different languages, local language, African languages, those inferior nations, and actually targeted by being caught on that slavery campaigns. So from that time, there is a mindset had been created in Sudanese society. Who is belong to Arab society is a super person, and who is actually part of that African groups, those are, you can say, a citizen, or you can say even inferior people. When the colonial time came in, the British colonial actually used the same group who are nominated or named or labeled by Arab in assisting them ruling Sudan, and they were being educated. And after the British, after we got our independence, actually the British hold the power to those groups and even the wealth with them. And then we have our national government from that time, from 1956, held by those groups who are mostly live in the middle of Sudan or in the center of Sudan. And the upper part or the northern part, which is closer to Egypt. So this is the ruling group, yet they are a small group, but actually they have the power, the political power, they have the wealth. From that time, this mentality had been actually moved along all over Sudan. When we talk about the center is the most developed part where the ruling group were settled, and the peripheries, when we talk about peripheries, all peripheries of Sudan, north, east, west, south, all of it. This one actually even divided within, because we have some groups there, like now, if we took Darfur as a case study, in Darfur, we have the African group and we have the Arab group. So the social conflict is very rooted within the society itself. If we go far and see the conflict in South Sudan, and now South Sudan cesses it because of that kind of mentality. And there is another element in South Sudan, we are coming to it later. So South Sudan kept underdeveloped, and they fought even before Sudan get its independence. in 1955, just like 4 months before our independence, the South Sudanese started to fight. They got their own independence on 2011. In fighting South Sudanese, actually, Sudan government used the Arab groups in Kordofan because they are neighboring South Sudan. The same issue which made later in Darfur by the Janjaweed, the Arab group, in fighting the African groups. So the issue of militias and to be used politically by the central government, it is very rooted there in Sudanese society. When we come to Darfur issue, there is a second, or now I have talked about the social conflict, which is there, and this is one of the elements, the political will in using this social conflict, it is there. There is another element of climate. When we come to Darfur, Sudan in general, if we talk about the climate, Sudan, we have 4 climates. On the upper north, we have the desert climate. When we come down, we have the semi-desert. And down it, we have the poor savanna, and then we have the rich savanna. So in this case, you can see Sudan, the northern part is very dry. And when you come down to the south, you will find it more richer than the upper part. The Arab group within this area, mostly they are pastoralists. And most of them, they are living, when we talk about the pastoralists, divided to 2. We have the camel keeper and we have the cattle keeper. The cattle keeper usually living down on the savanna and on the poor savanna and savanna. But the camel keeper living up on the north, on the desert, okay, or semi-desert. In 1980s, we have a drought, and that drought actually, it caused a very big famine, and the move of those groups from up there to down to the south, it became more huge, looking for the grazing for their animals. And now, by end of 80s, we have the camel keeper on pushing down, which wasn't happened before. And the camel keeper usually keeps themselves within the desert and the other dry places up there. So they came down. And now the conflict started between the farmers and the pastoralists, those who came down there, which create a war in 80s. Usually we call it 4 Arab War. And let me also talk about the word of Darfur. Darfur, it means a home of 4. 4 is a tribe, one of the African tribes there in Darfur. And you can say indigenous group with others. But actually, the last kingdom, the British took from them the power, it was 4 kingdoms. So when you said Darfur, you mean the home of 4 or land of 4. So these 4 tribes, they had a very aggressive war, sorry, with Arab on 80s due to this stress or this pressure had been made by the camel pastoralists who came down there. So when the conflict started in 2002, the government found it, you see, now here's the political will came in. The government found it is a very useful to use that social conflict and the needs of those camel pastoralists to the land, motivating them by giving them that land. So they mobilized them, equipped them by weapons, yet they never been trained, just a very swift training without any package of human rights or package of even international laws. Just you can see nomad people given weapons, heavy weapons, given even equipped by vehicles, and they told them, whoever you cleanse, you can occupy that land. So now in Darfur today we have a very different looking, because those groups who killed, cleansed, burned villages and occupied. So there is a replacement. Now we have more than 2.5 million at least, either in IDP camp within Darfur or a refugee status in Chad. Also, we have some in South Sudan, and we have others abroad, fragmented all over the world. You have it even here in UK. So their land occupied completely by those newcomers. And now this is a new conflict coming in. Those newcomers, now it is almost 20 years there. Even these 20 years can giving them that feeling of honoring that land. So this is a new conflict we are coming in. Let me also talk about Darfur. After secession of South Sudan, Darfur, in terms of square mile, it is not less than 200,000 square miles. It is 1/3 of the whole country land. And it has a very special position. It lays on the western part of Sudan with the international borders with Libya, Chad, Central Africa, and South Sudan. So you can see even it's very interconnected or within those countries. And whatever conflict within those countries, it can reflect in Darfur. And whatever in Darfur, it can reflect there. So that position giving Darfur a very unique and very special position within Sudan. Yet when we talk about the population of Sudan, the population of Darfur, the current Sudan after 2011, it's not less than 1/3 of the whole Sudan. Yet there are many people in Darfur immigrated from Darfur to other places seeking jobs, like we have in East Sudan, in Al-Gadarif. Many from Darfur were there, used as farm laborers. You can find them all over, even in North Sudan. Come to, this is actually the climate. Now I think I have given a brief about the climate change, about the social, about the political will. There is another element in other places. We have that social conflict there. And you know, Sudan is a member in Arab League, as well a member in Islamic states. So the identity of Sudan, the current identity of Sudan is Arab and Islamic country. When we talk about Arab, which ignoring the non-Arabs, and they are majority. This is one. Secondly, when we talk about Islam, ignoring there is Islamic people within Sudan. We see South Sudan has been seceded because the majority in South Sudan were Christian. Now we have two conflicts in Nuba Mountain and Blue Nile, and those conflicts started very early in 80s, before Darfur. But actually, they are not that known. And I'm going to talk why they are not known and why Darfur has been known by the globe. There are some elements there also. So there is another element within those two areas. Up to date, the war is going on and genocide also going on. And the other element here, Christianity. The remaining Christians within Sudan are there from those two areas, from Nuba Mountain and from Blue Nile. You can just imagine in Blue Nile up to date, there is a complete, a whole tribe denied a nationality because they are Christian. I don't know how we can describe them. Any state, they are there on that state. And even the state never pushed them out. But actually without identity. They are not allowed to get identity or to get a nationality, which actually denied them many other things like a health service, like education for their children. So it is there on ground nowadays. When we talk about Nuba Mountain, the war started in Nuba Mountain in 1985, and many people were killed. Many people displaced, and the war is still going on, and they oppressed. Even there, when we talk about Nuba, when you say this is from Nuba, as if you are telling this is from inferior society. It was there in Sudan. But now, due to struggle of Nuba in getting their own identity, in getting their rights, the situation now is rather better than before. But still, we believe the political will is not there. And I believe Sonia talked a lot about Omar al-Bashir, and so even now, the coup which took place from 25th October up to date, this military group who are naming themselves as a military council, it was al-Bashir Security Committee. So the same mentality, the same approach is going on. Why Darfur conflict or Darfur genocide is known, while the others of South Sudan, of Blue Nile, of Nuba Mountain, and now even we have the east of Sudan. And by the way, when we talk about South Sudan from 1955 up to their independence in 2011, the estimated number of the killed people within this period, it's about 2 million. To repeat, 2 million. The numbers of South Kordofan and Blue Nile, it's unknown because actually we are struggling to get that figures, and we hope within the coming years we will get certain figures because now we are working on that. So why Darfur? First of all, because Darfur, it was completely Muslims, no Christian among them. So even they can have some within the politicians can, it's kind of give care or something like that. This is one. The second element, when the conflict of Darfur took place, many new things happened. First of all, there were an international organization on place. And I remember MSF, Safe Children, all those were there by that time. The second issue, the technology revolution. We have the internet, we have the mobile system. So many things had been changed. So this is one of the elements. Also, when we talk about the educated people among Darfurian, it's much more than the other places. They are more educated than others. Also, the number of people, when we talk about more educated, because actually if we take the proportion among the all population, the proportion will be very high because they are the third amount of the whole population. So this is in brief. I have tried to give you just a big picture, and let me leave you because I think the time is going. And if you have any question, I'm ready to answer. And I think also my friend Sadiq is there to answer any questions. Thank you for your listening, and thank you for you all.
Thank you, Bushra.